Well, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Jason Levine, and thank you so much for joining me today for the Friday Masterclass. Good to be back with you. It feels like it's been a while. And today we're going to be covering some time-saving tips for Premiere Pro for editing, and just kind of ways to enhance and speed up your workflow, whether it's really right from the start when you're working with footage, particularly if you're working with 4K and above, or maybe it's compressed footage that your timeline is just having some issues playing back and you want to see everything sort of in full quality without having to go down to quarter res. Or maybe you're having some confusion around bringing in multi-channel audio files. What's the best way to do that? How to break things out to mono. And we're going to cover a couple of little tips along the way. Lots of other ways to also visualize things on screen, whether we're talking rulers and guides to various metadata and overlays and time code. A lot of these are just little hidden gems that are sort of inside of Premiere, and if you don't really know where to look, you might spend a lot of time doing that, but they're super useful and things that I use all the time. So with that, we're coming to you live across multiple networks as always today. Sorry for my friends on LinkedIn. Somehow my account, it got disconnected from my streaming platform. I got it reconnected, but it kept saying, there's an error now. Try back later. So we'll see you another time on LinkedIn. But for everybody else on the Twitters, YouTube, Behance, Twitch, and elsewhere, thank you so much for joining. Just going to cut over to the chats here. We have a couple quick shouts. We'll see who's around. I see you've got Steve and Jack and Umacorn and Cody and Jennifer and Roppod and Gring and Dez. Great to see you all. Thank you so much for joining. Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead and move over to Premiere Pro. And let me switch over my screen and we will get started. Okay. So as mentioned, the goal for today is to really go over, again, just a lot of the little things that I tend to use, especially now that by default I'm working in 4K with everything, as I'm sure many of you are. Ultimately probably delivering in 1080p, but all the source material, 90% of it that I do for little fun things, it's always iPhone 4K, and now largely 4K HDR because we have auto tone mapping in Premiere, which we covered a couple weeks ago. So it makes it a lot easier to work with that content. But all the content that I get, I do a lot of things internally, making little videos and edits, and all of it's 4K, and some of it is a combination of 4K. Largely not iPhone, it's usually from high-end cameras, whether it's RED cameras, whether it's ARRI cameras, and just being able to work in the timeline more smoothly with that, well, it just kind of makes that whole editing process a lot better. So the first thing we're going to cover today are using proxies. Now this is something we've covered on multiple streams before. We've made a couple little updates to proxies. One in particular, which you'll see in a moment here, which just makes visualizing the proxy on screen a lot more obvious because now we have an automatic watermark function. I've shown you in the past how to create a preset to add your own custom watermark. We're not going to cover that today. We can revisit that. It's a process. Hopefully one day we'll see that process made a little smoother, a little easier. But by default now you can add watermarks and you can do all of this even when you've got all your footage in the timeline. So I've been following a lot of Reddit threads recently, and a lot of people have been asking, sort of mid-edit, and the thing started out okay, and now everything's really slowed down, but I didn't do my proxies at the beginning. What can I do? I'm screwed. Okay, so first of all, for anyone not unaware of what proxies are, these are effectively smaller, lightweight versions of your master media, which just allow you to more easily and effectively scrub and edit in the timeline, but it's always tied to the master media. So at any point in time, you can visualize the master media with a single click. We make it super easy. You don't have to do any complex routing or linking. Even if these things were to go offline, it's very easy to reconnect. You can even connect to proxies made elsewhere in other software. But if you do them natively here, it's super easy. And again, the whole idea is, particularly if you're shooting with, let's say, H.264, H.265 content. I've seen a lot of Reddit threads on this recently. A lot of people say, oh, I edit H.264 all the time. It's fine. It's no issue. Well, that's great. Good. It's not the best editing format just because of the nature of this compressed media. So, if it works for you, that's awesome. If you're having some issues with playback and scrubbing, this is a way to solve that. So here we have in the timeline some footage from my pal Dave Helmley. And this is RED footage shot in 4096 by 2160. A little graphic on there. Beautiful footage. This is shot a couple years ago. I'm not exactly sure which camera. which flavor of red this was. So here's some, and this, by the way, this footage is natively ProRes 444. So they made, these are not the R3D masters, but these are the highest, least compressed versions via ProRes 444 to work with. I don't know why they transcoded these at the time. And then I've got some iPhone 4K content in the same timeline. And if you're watching this, it looks pretty good, but you may have noticed right at the beginning here, getting a little sort of sluggish motion. That isn't how it was captured. And one of the things I'm going to cover later, how to enable this little dot that you see here, it's showing that I've got some dropped frames during playback. Now, it seems to have caught up. Actually, that first shot seems to have been the most stressful. But we're dropping some frames. That's a drop frame indicator. I'm going to show you how to turn that on later. So ultimately, I'd like smoother playback while I'm cutting and editing this stuff. And I'm going to show a couple methods of doing this, or on different bits of content. We've only got 3 files in this project. So to do this, with the existing content that's in here, I'm going to come up to my project panel here. And I'm going to select my 3 clips. Okay. Oh, and by the way, just so you can see, if I go into properties, not like I need to verify, but so these are all Rec 709. But if I go down to the details here, you can see frame size, compressor, highest quality, highest version available when doing the transcoding. Okay, so let's go ahead and select these all. I'm going to right-click, control-click, and go down to Proxy, Create Proxies. All right, notice there's also Attach Proxy. So as I mentioned, if you had footage coming from another edit, someone else, maybe they're working in Avid, they're working in Resolve, whatever, and it's come to you, and they've got their proxies done externally, you can attach them. Reconnect full res media, you don't tend to have to use that function as much, particularly if you create them here, but just be aware of that. All right, let's go into Create Proxies. And when you do that, it's going to pull up this little Create Proxy dialog box, okay? Now, under Format, you have 3 flavors here. And you'll notice that there's an H.264 flavor. Now, you can, in fact, if you so desire, because H.264 will be the smallest of those 3. So you have DNxHR, you have ProRes, and then you have H.264. So if you're looking to save physical space on your drive or wherever these things are living, for whatever reason, you can use H.264. Now, again, it's one of those, I mean, it's sort of, yes, it can work, but H.264 is it's just not a great format for editing in general. Now, these will be lower resolution, lower bitrate flavors of H.264, so they theoretically should perform better. It's just, they're not the most ideal. And you could test that out for yourself, Don't listen to me, do it. But you'll see, and you can read on the interwebs. Not the best choice. DNxHR, MXOP18, fantastic choice. Again, if you come in here, it's actually showing only 1 preset now. We can add presets to this. Again, I showed this in a previous one. Most common, however, are probably going to be the ProRes proxies. And for a number of reasons. One, because these are native to both Premiere on the Mac, Premiere on the PC, and they just work, to be completely honest. They work really nicely. Now, I've got some of my own custom ones in here. You can see I've got some specific ProRes LT with logos. Again, this was because I was adding my own watermark. You'll also notice the GoPro Cineform flavors in here as well. Again, these are native file formats to Premiere Pro. So in terms of playback and scrub performance, these are going to work great for you. I highly recommend. Size-wise, I saw someone recently asking, well, what's the difference if you use Cineform versus just straight ProRes? I mean, they're fairly comparable. I haven't done a side-by-side test recently. I want to say at one point in time, I think the Cineform ones were maybe slightly larger. Slightly. But, when we're dealing with 4K, 6K, 8K, etc., you're dealing with massive files to begin with. So, yeah, I suppose if you're looking to save a couple hundred megs here or there, I suppose it could also theoretically be gigs, depending upon the length of the media. That's a consideration. But in general, I think you're good choosing either one. So again, ProRes, low, medium, high. Now, for this content, it's 4K, it's shot on red. And let's say that I'm not necessarily doing color or whatever. I just want slightly smaller files. I just want my playback experience to be better. I just, by default, generally choose low. It just really makes things really easy. And then you'll see that there's this new function here to add the watermark. And this is really one of the nicest things that we've added here, because oftentimes, particularly when you're using really well-shot content like on red, and especially if you're working in something like 8K, your low-res proxy, you wouldn't even know you're working in the proxies half the time, because without a watermark, just in the program monitor, which is already sort of minimized for most, depending upon your screen layout, you can't really tell. So the watermark will be there to just very obviously, as you'll see, show you where that is. Now, beyond that, you have the destination. So I always use the default, which is next to the original media in a folder labeled proxy. You can, of course, customize wherever you want that stuff to go. I don't know why I put this previously in a Convert to Rush projects location at some point, but evidently I did. So that's it. That's the setup. Go ahead and click OK. Now, what that's going to do, of course, is it's going to create what it calls a proxy job, and then it's going to send that over to the media encoder, which you can see I already had launched, and it's now processing all of those in the background very, very nicely. Now, these are all fairly short clips, so don't be too impressed by the render speed, but it is, in general, it's going to be pretty fast. Okay. Now, when we come back to the timeline here, there's a couple ways to sort of visually understand that we have the proxies attached. And the first, of course, is having the actual toggle proxy button enabled in your button editor. So I know for all of you, a lot of this is review, you've done it a million times. If you don't, I don't know if that button is in there by default. I don't remember. It might be now. It wasn't for some time. It might be now. To access the button editor, you simply click the plus sign right here. It pulls up this little panel, and this is the toggle proxy button, and you just click and drag that down into the available buttons that you want. So when you have that there, and you go ahead and toggle it on, now this footage, it's a little hard to see, there's your built-in watermark, all right? When the status is blue, status, when the indicator is blue, you're looking at proxies. When it's gray, you're not. And you can see, like, even I'll zoom in for you here. Okay, that you could actually visually see somewhat noticeably. I don't know how well that's coming over the stream, but if you look at the center of the flower here, just because there's such small details, you can sort of visually tell. But that's zoomed in. When I'm zoomed out, if I'm not really paying attention, I mean, yes, I may notice. Again, this is, I'm feeding it really good, really high density footage. So my point is, you just now have a very obvious way of knowing that you're looking at the proxy when you're going through all of this. Same here. Again, it's just making it a little more obvious on screen. So, and now when I play this back, note 0 frames dropped during playback. So that was the goal, right? The goal was we're using these smaller, lightweight versions of the master footage so that that light stays green and I'm still in full quality, full resolution playback. I should say full resolution playback, okay? Make sense? And you see the scrub is also super, super fluid. So you know how I mentioned I'm trying to eliminate, because of this particular podcast series I've been editing or assisting in editing, the use of right after things. And I had my little jar over here. I've since removed that. What? I just forgot the word I was going to eliminate now too. Oh, for heaven's sake. You just saw that happen. Gone. Thank you. Late 40s. Okay. So easy, simple, make proxies. Wade loves the button editor. What's up, Jack Watson? Okay. Really easy. And again, you know, regardless of what you're doing it on, what footage, you know, here's, again, I've shown this in the past. All right. This is some content that my young son edited. Now this was all iPhone, but you can see even here, now we're in reverse, so I'm not surprised we're dropping some frames. But, you know, let's see if I go back to just standard playback. Yeah, okay, it's okay. We're doing all right. But, you know, maybe the scrub is, I'm seeing it, it's a little jerky. It's kind of getting stuck in certain places. Oh, there's the return of Shark Puppet. Steve Kosoboom, there you go. Here, this is for Steve, right here.
What's going on? Where's my cheese?
All right, we haven't seen Shark Puppet in a while. You know, I might want to optimize the process. So again, I could first just reveal where this footage lives. Okay, it's all this stuff right here, right? Go into my proxy menu, create proxies, and do the same thing over again. And then just let it work in the background. So that's the nice thing, is that I can continue editing. Talked about this a million times, but for those of you new, it does all the proxy transcoding in the background. And then whether, you know, assuming you're in sort of proxy mode, which I am right now, I don't even have to leave that state. As the proxies are generated, it just swaps them out for you. Really, really seamless. Now, one other way to verify that your proxies are in fact attached is via the metadata here in the project panel. And if I click on the little hamburger flyout menu and go to metadata display. Now, did I remove mine? Jason's new for 2023. Let's see. What do I have in new for 2023? Do I have proxy status in there? Status, I do. So one of the metadata fields that I like to include is to show the status online, offline of the proxy. And that will change as it's being transcoded. Note, you can also have the proxy file path and I guess proxy media file name if you so desire. Let's go ahead and click OK on this. If we go full screen, you know, what's really bothering me is that it didn't save the layout, because I don't know about you, friends, but all of the media start, media end, media duration, video in, video out, why are those even in there? This is me just yelling. I don't need any of that here. It just takes up so much real estate and grumble, said the old man yelling at clouds. Video codec, necessary. In, out, no, I don't need that there. I can see that in other places. Okay, but you'll notice here that for the status of this content, we can see it's online, all right? So again, lots of different ways to verify that your content is ready to go. Jeff, yes, I wish you knew what proxies are. I don't know if you're kidding. Did you just join? Okay. You can get to the menu by right-clicking the headers row in the project. Yes. Jeff, again, so these are just lightweight versions of the master media transcoded in the background, instantly swapped out. And when you have them assigned, you can add an automatic watermark like you just saw right there in the corner, and it just makes playback and scrub that much smoother. Note, if you take a look, green, as I'm playing back, scrubbing, it's constantly green. If I turn the proxy off and I try, let's see if I play back now without the proxy, how it does. Yeah, immediately we're dropping frames. Okay, so that's with the native ProRes 444 4K on the timeline. Go back to my proxy, wind back, hit play, and 0 frames dropped. And our little watermark. And as mentioned, you can add your own watermark by creating your own ingest preset. I've done a few you've seen where I had my, well, I think it was the Jace's Places logo embedded on all those things. You can also create proxy presets via Media Encoder that have timecode and other things embedded in them if you so desire. But the default one, I think, is particularly cool and just useful, just easy. Okay. All right. Oh, Jeff, yeah, no worries there. Okay, I wasn't sure if you were messing with me. We have, you know, it's very casual on this stream. So there you go. I just re-explained for you. No worries at all. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you for editing in Premiere. Okay, so next thing, is loudness auto matching, or for the uninitiated, the ability to take multiple audio files in varying audio types and within 2 clicks effectively get it to a point where they're all sort of at the same starting point, the same starting level. All right. So if we take a look here, once again, I'm revisiting the content of my offspring. I think these were all COVID projects. And my youngest was doing some plushie videos and recorded them, sometimes with me, sometimes alone. But if we take a look at the audio files, now in general, they're fairly consistent, but you can see some clips are just particularly louder than others. And this is all dialogue, by the way. And, you know, as he was going through it, as someone who was learning how to edit at that time, he was saying, well, this volume's over here, and this volume's here, and this one's all the way up here, and this one's too loud, and it's too soft, and how do I make all those adjustments? So initially I showed him the clip mixer by default, and he said, yeah, that's taking too much time though, can I? And he said this, can I just make them all kind of the same real quickly? And I said, actually, son, you can. And you can do that via the Essential Sound panel with something called loudness auto matching. So now, again, I could play this for you. You may hear the different, I'll play it for you. You can hear sort of some of the subtle differences. Obviously, some are more subtle than others. But in general, as we were kind of doing this rough cut here, things are moving all around. So let's take a quick listen.
Nothing like a nice day, Green Hill, huh, Tails? Yeah, nothing like a nice day. It's that guy over there. Yeah. Well, he's doing bad things. Better go stop him. Let's go. Just give me the Chaos Emerald. Nice one. Now stay out of my face.
Okay. All right. So again, some of the changes are, you know, probably within 3 decibels. Maybe in some cases, you can see later down the line here, and because I measured, I know, within about 6 dB, which would be half the apparent loudness. So, you know, as we were kind of doing the rough cut here, he's like, these are so uneven, it sounds weird. It's going to take me forever to readjust. So here's how we can solve that, or at least get everything to around the same starting point. You will likely still have to do tweaks after the fact, but everything just kind of has the same basic loudness value. And this works for both music, dialogue, music, any kind of sound design, as you heard in there, we've got some of the sound design, and ambient sound as well. So from within the timeline here, I'm going to select all of the dialogue clips. Now, some of these others may also be dialogue here. I think, in fact, those are down there too. Choose those. And then I'm going to come up to Essential Sound. Oh, wait, now why is this? There we go. Oh, maybe some of these are already tagged. Son of a... Okay. I'm going to choose the first half here. Some of these may have been tagged inadvertently. And when I do that, you'll see that I now have the ability to tag these clips as dialogue. So when I do that, that effectively adds what we call like an audio type metadata tag to those clips. And when you do that, it's now going to reveal a series of effects and filters that you would commonly use to process dialogue. And by the way, this is, again, for those just joining, this is part of the Essential Sound panel, which you can access under the window menu. All right. So again, you select your dialogue, you tag it, you select it, you click dialogue, it tags it as dialogue, and now it gives you all of these, again, effects and things that you would typically use to process dialogue, which includes things like reducing noise or rumble, or adding compression. In this case, we refer to this as clarity or dynamics, which, by the way, is also particularly useful if you have varying levels of dialogue. We can get to that at another time. Maybe we'll do it here. EQ, enhanced speech. I don't particularly recommend using that one at all. And then you can also add some room ambience or what we call here creative reverb, to kind of put dialogue in a particular environment at the clip level. So that would be in lieu of using track-based reverb or ambience or delay effects. You can do that here within Essential Sound. Now, getting a little nerdy or getting a little deeper for you, Essential Sound applies effects at the clip level, not the track level. So that means if you apply a loudness auto match to a particular clip or series of clips, it affects just that clip or series of clips. It doesn't affect every clip in the track. If I were to use the track mixer, for instance, and apply something like a reverb, studio reverb here, that reverb now gets applied to every clip in the track. Right? So that's the difference. Again, I'm kind of dialing down up and down in terms of complexity because I know we have some new viewers today. Essential Sound applies everything at the clip level. So let's go into loudness. And as I mentioned, this was 2 clicks. So select your dialogue. Click 1 is tag as dialogue. Click 2 is loudness auto match, and it automatically matches the clips to a standard average loudness for dialogue, which I believe in this case is approximately -23 LUFS, which is loudness units relative to full scale. So let's go ahead and click on auto match, and if you pay attention to the visual here, all right, so pay attention to the highlighted dialogue as it does its thing. This happens really quickly. You'll see that it automatically, and in this case, it actually positively adjusted the volume, or I should say the loudness level of the dialogue to be more consistent. And now as you just sort of look at those waveforms, they do look quite a bit more consistent. Now let me see if I can find, let's see which of these, okay, so these weren't tagged, so we're gonna do the same thing with these 4. Dialogue, auto match, okay. And then let's choose this and this. I don't know where in my selection one of these was already chosen. That sounds very deep. Ah, it's this one right here. Sneaky. See, I just left one somehow. Dialogue, auto match. Okay. And this one somehow, I'll retag it and I'll auto match that. Okay. So now when we play this back,
Nothing like a nice day, Green Hill. Nothing like a nice day. So that guy over there. Yeah. Well, he's doing bad things. Better go stop him. Let's go. Just give me the Chaos Emerald.
now in that one clip there was a particularly large amount of noise. Again, this is, I think there was an overdub clip beneath it. So it's also amplifying all of that. But visually and sonically, if you were to measure all of these now, which you can do with metering, you will see that their loudness, which is the way that you perceive the overall level of said clip, are all going to be within this sort of familiar -23 range, okay? Now that's different from volume, which is the relative level of each of those individual clips to one another or to the overall mix. That isn't the way that you perceive them. You can adjust those via faders. Here, we're actually affecting the overall perceived loudness of each of these individual clips. So this is, again, a great way to sort of get started, to have a baseline. It's particularly useful. In this case, it was the same person doing all the dialogue. So even though there may have been a 3 decibel, I'm getting, by the way, super deep with you now. Even though there may have been a 3 to 4 or 5 decibel change, it's the same voice. And sometimes the delivery actually dictates having, adjusting the dynamics of the delivery. And as I mentioned, you can also use the clarity slider here to make that change. Having said that, again, it just depends what you're wanting to do with the dialogue. If you have multiple people speaking where the levels are really very, very different, that's where this becomes even more useful. When it's the same person, unless it's a mixture of ADR and different performances in different locations, maybe different microphones, the changes may be a little less obvious, or in this case, it sort of just made everything sort of noticeably louder. Maybe I didn't necessarily need that. So I'm giving you both sides of this because there's times where maybe you don't need to use auto match for dialogue. It's extremely useful if you have multiple speakers, because more often than not, their overall loudness, their overall levels, their overall peaks can also be different. Now, peak control is something a little bit different, but again, different people, different voices, different tonality, you're going to have varying levels either way. So loudness auto match is particularly useful for that. Now, one of the other things, as I mentioned here, that you can also use sort of at a group level here would be the clarity dynamics slider. And this is effectively applying dynamic compression to the voice. And most importantly, it's doing this via some Adobe Sensei AI. And it's doing all of the hard work of applying a compressor for you. If you've never used an audio compressor, I've done multiple videos on this. Compression, back in my Berkeley days, that was my jam. Sort of explaining to people how to properly set audio compressors. Still is. I still, once you understand how to use a compressor, it's just the greatest thing ever. This is doing the hardest work for you, which is identifying the threshold. And the threshold with compression is the point at which compression begins. So your signal has to exceed a certain threshold before it actually begins to adjust or attenuate the dynamics and oftentimes minimize the dynamic range based on how you use the ratio of compression for a particular clip. That's a lot of words. You have one slider here, it does all of that for you. Louis Valdez, you can't ease in, you have to knee in. Yes, exactly. RT365, I love your videos. How do you feel about Peter McKinnon switching to DaVinci? Yeah, Peter's a great dude. I mean, we'd love to. I'm sure he still has some projects that he dips back into Premiere, and I don't think he's left CC altogether. But yeah, it hurt a little bit in here. But Peter's a good guy, and I imagine like all NLEs, we can all share certain things. Maybe he comes back. We'll see. That video was actually from his other editor, right? Or maybe there's been a newer one since then. We'll see. But Peter's a good guy. Okay, so let's see now. Dynamics. So let's go ahead and I'm going to turn this on. Now, again, this dialogue's a bit loud already. I'm going to start this on natural. In fact, you know what? Maybe I'll turn off the auto match. I'm going to start this on natural. You can't read that here. And then gradually go to focused. And what this is going to do is it's just going to push the dialogue, push those voices forward, while also simultaneously essentially homogenizing the levels. Now again, if there's really varying levels here, it'll still be somewhat noticeable. Maybe we'd still want to use the auto match. But this is a great way, once you've tweaked sort of the relative levels, the balance in your mix of dialogue, to apply this clarity slider. And it's just going to push everything forward and just kind of glue it all together. So let's take a quick listen as we adjust this.
I got it! Okay, we got it back from him. Run! There's a room!
Hold on. Again, ambient noise on the recording.
Get off him!
Time to get out of here.
We are the secret characters in the next film.
So no
make
dynamics.
sure to watch till the end. Make sure to watch till the end!
Yeah, boys here. Make sure to watch all the poster videos that we're going to be making in the past. Okay? Go watch them.
Okay. Again, these are not cleaned up or anything, but you're hearing how is it making it louder? Yes, but more importantly, in terms of level, it's not peaking as high, it's just more sitting on top of things, more in your face. In the final version, where there's music surrounding all of this, it just pushes everything forward and just sounds a lot more focused. So this is, again, a really super useful feature. And just to sort of show you how you still have manual control, I mentioned all of the effects in Essential Sound are applied at the clip level. So if I go to this particular clip here, if I go into our effects controls under audio, you'll see that it has applied our dynamics processing effect. So that is a native compressor to Premiere and Audition. If you go ahead and click edit here, all right. Now, I've said this before many times. I love the sound of this. It does have gain reduction metering, which is a standard in compression. However, it doesn't have sort of the standard threshold settings because it uses this graph, and it is also doing sort of simultaneous downward expansion, i.e. gating. this is not the most user-friendly one to actually set. If you want more user-friendly settings, I recommend the tube-modeled compressor. But to the point I was making, and if you take a look at the dynamic settings here, as I adjust this slider, you'll see that it's dynamically adjusting ratio and threshold automatically. And again, this is kind of the benefit of using this particular clarity slider if you're not intimately familiar with how to properly set a compressor for dialogue. Compressors are used on dialogue in everything. I can safely say that. There's not a commercial, a TV show, a movie, a track on Spotify that doesn't have compression on vocals. Unless it says uncompressed vocals. Because it controls the dynamics. It pushes things forward. It lets it sit on top of music and other things. So this is a great way to use that if you're sort of uninitiated in setting compression manually. And I'm the first to say, if I didn't love the sound of it, it actually sounds really great. And because it has dynamic expansion, it also tends to, with extremely dynamic things, it's not a full gate, but it does kind of quiet some of the noisier parts. So it's a nice option to have. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Louis, when I found myself using Essential Sound, I was using too many attributes. I do love these features. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You can get very caught up in, oh, now let's add some EQ. Oh, let's add enhanced speech. Oh, let's add creative. Correct. I'm always the first to say, particularly with audio, go minimal. It will benefit you in the end. Okay. All right, so let's now go to watch folders. All right, so this is yet another particularly useful feature, which is, let's say you've now done, so there's a couple of reasons why you do this. So a watch folder it's a folder, so you can use the same word in the definition. It's a folder that you create, just like a folder you would make on your desktop or in the Finder, that you create from within Adobe Media Encoder. And then you can take footage and drop it into the watch folder, and it will automatically convert, transcode all of that media to a particular codec type that you choose within the Media Encoder. So why would you do this? Okay, let's say you have a bunch of finished masters. So you've edited a bunch of commercials or whatever it is that you've done, and you want to archive them. And you want to archive them all into a particular ProRes format or flavor. You're never going to re-edit these things. You just want an archive that's a decent quality that you can put on a drive and forget about. You might convert, and maybe that media is all in all different types or different formats. You can convert it all to one consolidated format. Or let's say, this is something I used to do a lot of times back in the day. Again, when storage was sort of at a premium, I might take all of my 1080p or 4K stuff, and I just make sort of a 720p copy, which I could share. Maybe it's really more for mobile sharing or something like that. It's still HD. It's still going to look great, but I don't need a 4K version of it. I might do that. There's lots of reasons why you convert or transcode media. The point is, you set it up here, and then you just drag and drop stuff into this folder, and again, Media Encoder does all the work for you. This is one of those undervalued features. By the way, you can also theoretically create proxies externally doing this as well, or just transcode. Let's say you have you're editing a feature, and you have QuickTime, you have ProRes media, you have MXF media, which can also be QuickTime. You have H.264, you have H.265, you have S-Log3 media, whatever, coming from Sony, whatever, which can also be QuickTime. Lots of different flavors, and you want to convert everything into ProRes 444 or GoPro Cineform 12-bit with Alpha. You can use watch folders to do that too. So let's go ahead and create one. So Media Encoder is launched, and again, we have the queue, so that's where you see all the processing. Here's all of the proxies that we had made, right? And I just said it again, virtual jar. Go into watch folders, and we're going to click on Add Folder. And let's place it on the desktop, and I'll call it Batched Media. Okay? And choose. And once I do that, now all I have to do is tell it, okay, what format do I want to batch all of this media into? So again, you can choose all of your various formats here. And by the way, we've since changed the export panel in Premiere Export Dialog to the new sort of native one that's non-modal. Note that here in Media Encoder, this is kind of showing you the old school. This is what you had previously when you do Control-M or export media in Premiere. So you can choose whatever you want. So I'm going to choose H.264 because again, these are just archives. I just want kind of a smaller, compressed version that I can share around, maybe share with friends, family, whatever. Again, this is just for me. It doesn't matter. You can choose whatever format you want. Just giving you an idea. And I can come in here, and then as always, of course, I have lots of presets to choose from. All right, it's either some of my custom ones that I've made, and I think I am going to use I do want to go with like a 720p. So one of my favorites that I still use for that is this YouTube. It's a little old school, but YouTube 720p. All right, we know where it's going, and that's it. That's all I have to do. So how does it work? Okay, so let's bounce over to the desktop. Okay, and in fact, here we can keep the panel up over here. And here's my footage for batching folder. Okay, let's shrink this up. And all the ones in green, these are the ones that I want to convert. You can see some are MP4, some are QuickTime, some are 4K, some are 1080p. I think it's a mix, 4K and 1080p. And I just want everything to be 720p, stereo, 6 megabit, whatever the attributes of this particular preset are. For archive, for storing, for social sharing. Again, that's entirely up to me. So I'm going to take this content. Now again, I can just drag it directly or I can copy, whatever. I'm just going to drag directly. It doesn't affect, it doesn't overwrite your masters. That's an important distinction to make here. Drop it into batched media. Okay. And when I do that now, you will now see that it is now beginning the process under the Queue tab here of going through and batching all of my media for me, one after the other. It's just happening in the background, just like that. Super easy. All right? And that's it. There we go. Next one. Taking a second there. There's the next one. Okay? And if you go into the batched media folder here, so you'll see it has source media. All right, and it just shows you each individual clip gets placed into its own folder at a particular time. And then you have the output. So in this case, this is all of the new media, but note that all of it now has MP4, right? We can see, I did it again. We can see that, if we take a look at even here, this one, SF Sunset Cloud. So this was a 4K piece of media. This is now 16 megabytes, which is very nice. Again, this is just for my own little personal archive. I can quickly view this. Looks great. Same with this. Hi, it's Jason Levine. Okay, this one was 240 FPS. So some classic S-Log content pre-graded from some of our demos. And if we go into info on this, you can see that all of it is 1280, 720. Again, if we go to SF Sunset Clouds, this original one, you can see, so 3840, 2160, ProRes 422 HQ, and the new one, 1280, 720. MP4. Okay? So batch folders, again, I think they're sort of an underutilized, very easy way to transcode. If you want to build your proxies offline like this, very easy to do. If you want to archive your media to a consolidated format. By the way, there's other ways to do this inside of Premiere. I tend to, if I just have a bunch of things that I want to quickly convert, this is the way I do it. Because a lot of times, I'm just on the desktop in the Finder. So it's just easier for me to find things that way rather than trying to sort of, do it inside. I'll be honest, I've shown it here a bunch of times. We have the media browser here. And again, this lets you, go into your, go into your folders and find content. And, you can choose how you want to view the media. And, you can have thumbnail views and all of that. And you can see all the audio files here. And then you can drag stuff into other locations or transcode as you drag in. I just find this a little more clunky. I'm not as fast doing it this way. A lot of times it's just easier for me to find it on the desktop. So another reason why that is particularly useful. Louis Valdez, would you prefer building proxies within the camera? I mean, sure. So that's the thing. And by the way, if you're using something like camera to cloud, which we've featured on the stream here, those are simultaneously being created for you. So yes, if your camera does them, in that case, they, depending upon the camera, and I shoot Nikon, so mine does not do that. But I imagine when you import that content, they're not automatically attached. So that's where you'd use the attach functionality to do that. And you should be able to point to just one, and it should find and attach all the others based on probably a numerical value that's shared between the media. But sure, I mean, that's, again, the proxy, the whole point is just to make the editing process a little faster, a little smoother. So whether you create them in camera, again, maybe you don't like the look of the ones in camera. I don't know, right? You never know. So, or I don't know. So you can choose, but that's entirely up to you. Whether you make them here or in the camera. Obviously, if you do it in camera, then it's ready to go. Then you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to waste time when you get to Premiere, and the relinking is fairly easy. Earlier, you mentioned you don't recommend using enhanced speech. Is there a reason why it's not recommended? Sorry, I just caught up. Lacey Royce. So yes, and just to be very clear, I'm talking about the enhanced speech functionality of, let me go back so I can actually point to it, of the Essential Sound panel here, not to be confused with podcast enhanced speech, which is a web-based AI algorithm that actually cleans up dialogue. Two different things. So for this, the only reason I say it is, here's the thing. If you've got clean dialogue, I find, first of all, I'm an audio engineer. I don't know what high tone, low tone means. I rip on this all the time. That's meaningless. So what is that? I don't know what that means. High tone, low tone. That means nothing to me. If you have really clean, really well recorded audio, I've never once turned that on and went, that's better. Now, that's not to say it can't do something good for you. Maybe it can. I've never experienced that. So try it, but it's totally non-destructive, so give it a shot. I'm just saying that when I've had stuff given to me even where, okay, you know what, it's a little, maybe it was a little bright or a little thin, and I turned on high tone, it just didn't make it, and I can't remember, one makes it bassier, one makes it more trebly. That's it. It just sounded either bassier or more trebly to me. It didn't sound like a comprehensive, AI-based equalization change. So I'm not a fan. I don't like the sound of it. And more often than not, one of those makes things just sound brittle to me. And if you have really bad sounding audio, you probably don't want to enhance with a single button click like that. You probably want to do a little more comprehensive EQ. And in that case, even these preset EQs may not be enough. That said, of course, if you enable them, just as I showed you before, you can always go, now this uses the graphic equalizer. This is a pretty sort of easy to understand because you have, low frequencies, mid frequencies, high frequencies, and then you can tweak those sliders, accordingly using your ears. But in general, I'm not a fan of this one. Okay, did that make sense, Lacey? I'm very passionate about that answer. Okay. Shalomi is asking, why did they remove the proxy from import window? Will the proxy be included in the import again in the future? Oh, you mean when you're importing content into the project? Yeah, good question. I guess that's no longer in here, huh? That may be, that may very well be a feature request already on the list. Because yes, previously when you would import, and you can't do it the other way anymore, correct? Or can you? Let's see. Yeah, that's just going to bring it in as it is. Yeah, good question. I think think you can still do it via media browser. Yeah. So if you bring in the content via media browser and you have ingest selected, this will create the proxy for you. So actually, no, it's proxy and or a duplicate. So if you go into create proxy here, so you just have to change that to create proxy if you want. So you can do it via media encoder. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Again, a lot of the changes that were made via the import and export dialogues, I know we have been listening, but you can still do it via media encoder, media browser, and hopefully we do see that return. Okay. All right. Yes, you know about the media. Okay. Yes. Faster. Okay. All right. Last couple minutes here. Just wanted to point out a couple again, talking about sort of overlays and other things. Oh, and by the way, here's the, I've shown this before, but this is just a very quick look at that sonic edit here. But there's some good moments. A lot of sound design.
Bad things. You wanna fight, huh? Ah!
I told him you need but he was saying, but the mouth doesn't move. Anyway, this was all done by a 9-year-old at the time, so pretty cool that he got very into the sound design part of this. Okay, so overlays. So these are one of the things that, again, if you didn't look for them, you might not know where to find them. At the bottom of the wrench menu found in the program monitor, also source monitor under settings, we have overlays. And these will show you, and by the way, you have options for the overlays. And you can choose, I think, there's a couple of presets that you can build in here. And you can see you can show all different types of things: source timecode, sequence timecode markers, clip names, file names, sound timecode if there's embedded TC in your audio files. You can show all tracks, you can choose the alignment, and you can see you can have multiple fields of where these overlays exist. So maybe you want source timecode on the left, and over here you want markers or clip name in the middle, and then on the right side you can have something else. So just different ways to provide real-time, non-destructive, non-burned in overlays on your footage. So as I scrub through, you'll see where there's different audio tracks being leveraged. It's now showing me where those are being leveraged, which tracks have that audio. Same with the video tracks. It's just sort of a thing that, again, if you're working and doing a lot of multicam stuff, it can be very, very useful. I tend to keep these on with long edits like this. Talking about the dropped frame indicator here. So again, I always keep this on. I don't know, this might be on by default now. Maybe you don't want it on. Maybe you're showing something to a client, you don't want to see them. Maybe it's not actually dropping frames noticeably, but it's going yellow every now and again, and that's distracting. It's under the same menu, show dropped frame indicator. So I can turn this off, and it just goes away right there. I like having it on because it also allows me to sort of test, how my machine is performing on particular kinds of footage. This is an older system still. I'm still in the process of building my newer studio, but Mac Studio. But this one is, I just keep this on all the time. And it's a good indicator, well, yeah, maybe I need to use proxies here, or maybe I just need to drop the fractional playback resolution. Also from within this menu is where you can show guides, and you can also show rulers. And if you haven't been using Premiere for a while or you're new to it, these things are not on by default, but the guides work just like they do in Photoshop, in After Effects. You can actually even share these particular guides between Premiere and After Effects. You can see I've got sort of a title safe, action safe setup going on here. Not that that's so needed in the web world anymore. That was more for DVD, Blu-ray, and sort of TV production to some degree. But all of these are easy to manipulate, to move. You can create new ones, of course. You can add guides. You can change the color of a particular guide, just, and then drag them out, make new ones, okay? So a lot of flexibility here. I don't typically always leave the guides on, but if I'm doing stuff like in this particular video where I had titles and things, this might be a good indicator for me that I need to, move this down or something. Like I want it more in this quadrant of the screen. So, those can be particularly useful, having those guides. And I think, I'm trying to remember, do we have, I can't remember if we have preset guides, guide templates. I guess we don't have them anymore. Or maybe we do. I guess not. Maybe safe margins is the only one. Did we? Maybe I made all the guide templates. I can't remember. Point is, you can create your own guide templates if you want to do that. So those are very useful. And there's so much more, but unfortunately, friends, that's all the time we have. So thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your, I can't find my camera, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. And we will see you again next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.